Hello, and welcome to another episode of EKU Online's eCast series. EKU Online's mission is to change lives by providing access to affordable, quality degree programs in meaningful disciplines that positively impact our society. Thank you for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Ballou with EKU Online, and today we're joined by Brittany Brown, Assistant Professor in the College of Justice, Safety, and Military Science. Brittany teaches primarily in the Fire Protection and Safety Engineering Technology program. She previously served as the Fire Marshal and Training Officer for the Lovington Fire Department in Lovington, New Mexico, and as the Team Chief for the Lee County Arson Task Force. She also worked for the state of Texas as a Deputy State Fire Marshal in the Code Enforcement Bureau and as a Deputy State Fire Marshal for the New Mexico Fire Marshal's Office and the Fire Investigation Bureau. Brittany also spent time working for the Clovis Fire Department in Clovis, New Mexico, and the Farwell Fire Department in Farwell, Texas, working in fire investigation, firefighting, and emergency medical services capacities. She is currently the Vice President for the New Mexico Fire Marshals Association and works as an adjunct instructor for the National Academy and the New Mexico Firefighters Training Academy. She also teaches for the Southern California Safety Institute and the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Brittany serves as a board member on the Crime Scene Scientific Area of the Fire and Explosion Subcommittee for the Organization of Scientific Area Committees for Forensic Science. She also currently serves as a principal member for the NFPA 407 Technical Committee for the Standard on Aircraft Fuel Serving, and has previously served as a principal member for the NFPA 410 Technical Committee for the Standard on Aircraft Maintenance. In addition, Brown serves as an advisory board member for the Forensic Fire Analysis Institute and as a committee member for the Fire Performance and Wildland Interface Code Interpretation Committee for the International Code Council. Brittany served 10 years in the United States Air Force as an enlisted aerospace maintenance craftsman and flight mechanic. During this tenure, she operated with the Flight Safety Department as an aviation crashworthiness and survivability analyst and fire and explosion mishap investigative analyst. In addition to undergraduate and graduate degrees from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, Brittany is a PhD candidate in forensics with a concentration in arson, explosives, firearms, and tool marks from Oklahoma State University. Welcome, Professor Brown, and thank you so much for your time today. We generally appreciate it. So let's get started. You obviously have a very impressive and extensive background in fire service and investigation field. Why did you decide to move into teaching in academia?
I've been teaching for quite a while. I love teaching for the New Mexico Firefighters Training Academy and the National Fire Academy. Moving to academia was kind of initially a rough transition, but I love teaching full time and I love my lab facilities at EKU. Moving out here, obviously from New Mexico, Texas area, I think this is a good fit, and I love being able to impact, especially a lot of young students and career fire students, because obviously I was an online student for all my degrees. So EKU is obviously a really good fit. We're one of the leaders in the fire program, and so I was happy to transition. It's been pretty cool.
Fantastic. Well, and I was going to ask what led you to EKU. You mentioned the fire lab and the reputation of the program, the good fit of being in Kentucky. Is there anything else that made you want to join EKU or led you here?
Yes, I knew a lot of the professors prior to working here, mostly just from industry, which I think is one of the really cool things that EKU has, is that all the professors are still very involved in the fire service and very involved in the fire investigation community. And so that's where I met most of them. And they're always like, hey, you should come out to EKU. And, eventually I did, and here I am.
Fantastic. Well, we're so glad to have you and all your experience and expertise. Your bachelor's degree is in aviation management and safety, and you spent 10 years in the military working in this area. How'd you become involved and interested in this field?
Actually by accident. So, I was a flight mechanic for a long time, and really all that means is that when the C-130 aircraft would go places, I was the mechanic that would go along and fix it. I got to know the aircraft really well and became pretty learned in my field and wanted to transition to aircraft accident investigation. So within that field, there's obviously a lot of specialties, team doctors guys, or maintenance guys, or guys that are going to analyze the air traffic control towers or engine issues or metallurgical issues. And I picked aircraft crash worthiness and survivability, which has a lot to do with fire. Luckily, not enough aircraft really start on fire that it was I could get a whole lot of experience. So I went to the Clovis Fire Department when I was still enlisted, and I said, "Hey, can I help you?" And they said yes. And I loved it. I worked for Clovis for years while I was still active duty military down in Clovis, New Mexico, Cannon Air Force Base. And I just fell in love with the career. I'd done 10 years. My enlistment was up. By this point, I had met my future partner with the New Mexico State Fire Marshal's Office, Bill Farmer. And he was like, "Hey, we got an opening at the state. You've been doing this for a lot of years now. Why don't you come up and try to be a New Mexico State Fire Marshal?" And I did fire investigation full time. Became a firefighter and said, "Hey, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life."
That's fantastic. It sounds like the field found you more than anything.
I know, yeah. It was I tell people that they're like, "How on earth did you get here?" And I do think it found me. It was a good fit, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
Well, and it's such an interesting mix coming from that aviation background. Like you said, that is, fire investigation specific. That's quite a niche. And then that you're able to then apply that and transfer it into that broader scope of fire investigation in general. It's very interesting.
Yes.
So let's talk about teaching for a bit. What is your favorite course to teach and why?
By far, FSC 370, which is the Electrical and Mechanical Systems Failure Analysis, is my favorite. I love that class. So the main part of that class is understanding how electricity can cause fires, but also how appliances work, how the wiring to your house works. Electricity is everywhere and it has caused a lot of fires, but really understanding how your electrical and mechanical systems work is really, really important. I love that class. I love the hand part. I love having a lab that I get to do all this. We recently bought probably a couple dozen appliances, and so now we have a full appliance teardown lab. Everything from a refrigerator to a coffee pot is completely deconstructed and labeled. We look at all the safety measures. We talk about how products are made, how they're regulated, historic recalls, how all this stuff works, but also electricity is a competent ignition source because we have electricity in almost all of our fires. And in order to be able to say this did or did not cause a fire, we need to understand it. So that is by far my favorite course. I love teaching that course. I love just, all the hands-on stuff that we get to do because there's nothing like it. And I think that's why EKU is kind of special, is because we have the facilities to be able to do as many burns as possible. Most of our students, especially in the investigations curriculum, they'll get to do several full-scale burn cells where they actually get to go out into our lab and they get to investigate. So that is by far my favorite course. I love the electrical aspect.
That's so interesting, and it sounds so applicable for the students. Can you talk a little bit? I know this is kind of a bonus question, but how can they then apply that to their careers once they graduate from EKU, once they have that knowledge about the electrical systems and being able to tear down those appliances and see how they really work? How does that apply in the real world once they graduate in their careers?
I see. Oh, luckily I've gotten to see some of them use it already. I've had some of my previous students come back to me and say, "Hey, we had an electrical fire and look at this." It's one of those things I think they're always going to continue to use because even though we have evolving technology like our lithium-ion battery issues and our solar cells associated with our homes and the Teslas and all of this new technology coming out, it gives them building blocks that they can burn on, it gives them blocks that they can build on. So I think that's really, really important because once they understand the basic fundamentals, they can move forward from that and they can always use this because all your appliances, they're not changing too much. And as long as you understand how electricity works and how some of your appliances work and how your solar panels work, your batteries, your DC, AC power, it's very easy to apply that to even new and evolving technology. So they get to build upon this. And I love hearing their real cases in the field when they come back and they're like, "Hey, we had a lightning strike and I was able to use this," or "Hey, I found this and I thought you'd like it." I love it when students send me pictures. They're like, "Hey, I thought you'd like this. This is a terrible electrical issue," or, they get to learn how to, apply their whole degree where they can say, hey, this was an electrical issue, it's a violation of code, but it was not the cause of the fire, but it was still something to note. So I really like that part because it's something they can always build on. It just gives them a really strong foundation.
Fantastic. So expanding on teaching a little bit, let's focus on online. You mentioned that you were an online student yourself. Did you have some prior experience teaching online? I'm assuming EKU, you've been teaching online for EKU. We have a suite of online fire programs. So what fire science courses do you teach online, and what do you enjoy about this mode of education?
I mostly teach the FSC 370, which is the electrical and mechanical systems failure analysis. I do the summer term, which for investigation students, they do have to come in for 2 residencies. One of those is for 370, so I did that term in 2021, and then this summer in 2022. I'm currently teaching 1 online class this semester, which is FSC 250, which is our introduction to explosions. I love the 370 because you're going to meet the students. And that residency is so important because, yes, we can give you a ton online, but you're going to get a lot of hands-on when you come to residency. That's one of the reasons why I think we're kind of special, is that I can make the videos for the students, I can do experiments, I can do everything for them and, give that to them on our nice Blackboard platform. But then they get to come see me, and I can always say, hey, we'll talk about this we'll talk about this when you guys get here, we'll expand upon this. And it gives them a more practical approach where they can actually, look at things and touch things. And especially fire service, like we're pretty tactile learners. So a lot of my fire service guys, especially my online guys, because they're mostly career, I know that they need to see it. And it's just not the same when you're doing it over the video. But when you have that and you can say, okay, I learned this and now I can apply it, and now I can touch it, and now I can do it, I think it's a really, really unique approach. So that is probably my favorite course to teach online. In general, it's my favorite course overall. But that having them here for the summer, it's a week, and it's a full week. We're still kind of optimizing how we can best utilize their time to make sure that we fit as much as possible in to give them the tools that they need to be successful.
Yes, I've had the opportunity to talk with quite a few students, either while they're here for that residency or after the fact, and they rave about it. I know sometimes that might seem as a deterrent for an online program. Students are like, how am I supposed to take a week out of my life and do this? But then they get here and they love it. I know it's a fantastic opportunity for them.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the field of fire safety and investigation in general. How has that changed over the scope of your career? What are some changes that you've seen? And is there any new technology that's, either already been employed or is up and coming that you anticipate will have a profound impact on the field and how investigations are done?
Oh, we're a constantly evolving field. Fire investigation is a forensic field. And so there's constantly evolving technologies, ways that we're trying to make our field more scientific. As far as hazards, the batteries, the solar panels, the vehicles, it's kind of endless. There's always going to be problems with that. Obviously, the lithium-ion batteries are receiving a lot of publicity right now. That's something that we need to address as fire investigators. And I think that's one thing that's kind of cool about a lot of our programs, is that we're constantly updating them. We're always making sure that we incorporate new technology, new camera technology, new literature, especially with the batteries. We added a lot more solar and alternative energy systems back into 370, just because it's becoming an issue. We got to address these things. These things are causing fires, and we need to give our students the tools so that they can successfully analyze these components and say, hey, this did or did not cause my fire, and here's why. There's just so much new stuff coming out. I think one of the things that we're going to struggle with is that most of your codes are very reactive.
Okay.
And so as fire investigators, we need to kind of help be a little bit more proactive, address these evolving hazards so that we can deal with these things that are causing fires a little bit better, because we're always going to be employed in the fire service. There's always going to be fires, but we have a duty to protect the public, and that's what we need to do.
How about as far as technology on the investigative side? I know you mentioned the technology that's changed, that's potentially creating more fires or just different hazards to think about. Are there tools that have been introduced within the last couple of years that you've been able to use to help on the investigative side?
Yes, I think the 3D scanning and the 360 cameras, those are becoming more prevalent. There's a new alternative lot photography that's becoming more prevalent in crime scene investigation. I think we're still kind of trying to see how that's going to have applicability in fire investigation. Also, IR and UV photography. I'm interested to see how that's going to have applicability in fire and explosion investigation, especially with explosive residue. There's a lot of tools. We're starting to get a lot more digital mapping. The drones, I think, those have become really, really useful. That's become a big program in the United States. A lot of offices across fire marshals offices across the United States are starting to institute programs for that. It's pretty neat. A lot of fire investigators are starting to get their drone licenses so that they can better see their scenes. As technology is increasing, I think it's becoming a greater tool for us. And we just need to keep figuring out how it has applicability in our industry, because obviously all forensic fields are very diverse, but fire investigation is, I mean, it's kind of special. You have a scene that's in a lot of cases, very, very damaged, and you need to decipher and interpret what happened. And luckily, we're starting to figure out what tools that we have and how we can use a systematic methodology to figure out what occurred there. So it's pretty neat because we're still figuring out, can this tool work for me? Which is one of the fun things about forensics, is that we're going to see some interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary tools that maybe weren't for us, but maybe we can use them. So I think with the research that we're doing, I know a lot of other faculty members are doing research. I'm doing some research as well to figure out what can we use and how is it beneficial for the career, and how can we present this and then eventually, integrate it into our field and then integrate it for our students as well.
Fantastic. It sounds like a lot to keep up with between the new things being introduced that present fire hazards, and then also the tools available to investigate them. So how do you stay up to date and involved with changes in the profession and new things being introduced?
Well, one of the fun things about being a fire investigator is that we always have to stay current in our field. So I'm always going to training. That's one of the things I spend a lot of my off time doing. I obviously teach for the National Fire Academy, but I also attend every year as a student. I still work for the Mexico Firefighters Training Academy, as much training as I can do online, or if I can do training here in Kentucky. I'm still an active firefighter, and so I'm still involved in that side. I work for the Whitehall Fire Department just north of town here in Richmond.
Okay.
And just staying involved in the fire service, because you're not going to know what problems you have if you're not actively there. So, hey, how are we managing some of these electric vehicle fires? What hazards are out there and how can we deal with them? But unless you're kind of still active, you're not going to know. So I just train as much as possible, continue to be research. We're always going to be employed in the fire service, emergency medical service capacity. Just knowing what is out there and how we can deal with it.
That's great. So you mentioned earlier some things that you feel are kind of special and unique to EKU. If you had someone come up to you and say, like, especially in this profession, some people feel like, why do I need a degree? Do I really need a degree? What would you say to that person? Why should I get a fire science degree? And then why should I complete that with EKU?
Obviously, I would advise it. I've always been a big advocate for education. I did a lot of my education while I was still in the military, and it did help me in my career. I think we're getting to the point where in the fire service, we're a more professional entity. And so getting a degree is starting to become pretty common practice. I think it helps your marketability as a fire service professional to continue to advance in your career. But also it makes you a better firefighter. It makes you a better fire investigator, a better fire marshal. It's going to help you do your successful. With EKU, I know there's other fire service programs out there. I think ours are pretty unique. We still have all of our faculty are still really involved in the fire service and really involved in the fire investigation field. And I think that's one of the things that makes us special, but also the hands-on. I know there's online programs, but especially for the fire investigation students, mind you, there's obviously the 3 degrees, and the fire investigation is the only one that does require residency. Getting that 1 week, that's hands-on that you just can't really replace. So getting an EKU, if I were to probably go back and get a fire service degree, I would probably go to EKU because I've heard about these programs ever since I first went to the fire department, and I was like, huh. And they're like, well, EKU has all these labs, and we have all these burn cells and they blow up cars and they do all this stuff. It's you just can't replace that. So I'm very lucky to have the facilities that I do have. So I would definitely say, hey, the fire service is going to the point where you should get a degree, and it's easy to go on with EA. Obviously, our programs are really flexible, and that residency it's vital. It's just going to continue to help you in your career, and you can always build upon it.
Great, thank you. So you're full-time faculty, volunteer firefighter, working on a PhD. Do you have any spare time? And if you do, what do you like to do in that spare time?
I don't have a whole lot of spare time. I still love teaching at the National Fire Academy, and I love teaching for California. Most of my summers, I still go back out home to New Mexico. I'm married, and we have a chocolate lab puppy. But we like to fish and we like to hunt. Here in Kentucky, I'm still looking for good fishing spots.
Okay.
But mostly whatever I can do with the fire service. I still love being active and running calls and doing all that. And obviously my PhD is hopefully be done in a year, but still working on that. But no, I love to fish.
Okay. I wish I had some fishing spots to share with you, but I don't. So, but I do. I'll let you know if I hear of anything. You mentioned your PhD. What's your research? What's your dissertation on, if you don't mind sharing?
Yes. Okay. So it's going to be the toxicological quantification and classification of interior furnishings. It's pretty much based on the premise that we are, most of our fire fatalities are still occurring due to smoke inhalation, and it's mostly based on the products that are in our home. So probably about 20 years ago, you had up to 17 minutes to escape a home fire, and now you have between 3 to 5, because all the things in our home are burning at a more accelerated rate, but they're also producing worse stuff. They're producing worse byproducts of combustion, and that's what's really killing and hurting people. So right now, we don't really have a good way to classify what we put in our homes based on toxicity. So my project is based on the fact that we have, the ASTM E84, which is going to be the flame spread rating, which we haven't really updated since 1922 in the Steiner tunnel test. I want to take all of our interior furnishings and let's base them upon how they burn and what they produce and in what quantity. So like hydrogen sulfide, if you have any production of that, that's obviously going to be a greater issue than even carbon monoxide. We need to quantify and classify that. So essentially, I'm going to burn a lot of stuff, kind of integrate that with a cross-disciplinary approach with industrial hygiene, and see the best way that we can quantify and classify the stuff we put in our homes and say, okay, this is worse for you because this is what it yields in byproducts of combustion. So that's I'm doing that with Oklahoma State University, and I'm very excited for it. That was what part of my master's was on. I got my master's in systems engineering, and that was the system that I designed, because I think it's really, really important, especially working as a fire marshal for as long as I have. We still have a problem with fire fatalities in the United States, and over 80% of those deaths are related to smoke inhalation, and it's because of the synthetic things we're putting in our homes. So I don't know if I think it'll I hope, but I want to quantify and classify what the stuff is and rank it so that we can say this is worse for you, this is better, and then maybe see if we can go, maybe some Consumer Product Safety Commission management of the stuff we put in our homes to maybe make our homes safer for us.
That is fascinating and not something that I'd ever thought about before. So that is really interesting. I would love to hear your results. You'd have to bring it way down for me, but it'd be interesting.
Thank you. I'm excited about it.
I can tell. It's great. So that wraps up most of my formal questions. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience as they listen to this or view this video?
No, thank you for taking the time, and I'm excited to talk about some of our programs here on the fire side. I know we're a smaller part of campus, but we got a lot going on, and I'm excited to see hopefully some of our enrollment numbers increase, because we do have some great programs, and I love my lab facilities. And as y'all know, I'm new at EKU. This is my second year. Still very excited to be here and excited to keep learning.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. It has been a real pleasure getting to speak with you and learn more about your research and interests and everything. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.